Peace. I am Dr. Philip Browntree, and you are tuned into the March 3rd edition of Rhetorically Speaking. Props to those of you who are watching on the YouTube and Twitch at Black Media Nexus. Like, subscribe, and comment. I will hop in the comment section, whether it's an unhealthy comment or a healthy comment. I will get in the comments with you and engage with you because that's just what this is about. Also, salute to those of you who are listening on whatever audio streaming platform you're paying $15.99 a month for. You are appreciated as well. Again, like, subscribe. I'm hopping in those comments too. So before I get into today's topics, I want to reflect on the last month briefly. I know you're like, Phil, you started Black Media Nexus and we were looking to support you and then you just disappeared. Well, I've been navigating some grief and some loss. My stepfather, God bless the ancestor, passed away at the tender age of 82. And so I've been navigating the thoughts, feelings, and emotions related to that loss. Um, and so I feel ready in getting back out here and having conversations. Not that I've necessarily processed the loss, because when you're navigating grief, when you're navigating loss, it's something you're going to be navigating for the rest of your life, right? Ideally, it's in a healthy way, but it's not something that just leaves. Your body still remembers. And so that's what I intend to do until, the ancestors call me home. It's nothing like a transition that has you that forces you to refocus. If you're listening to your body, if you're listening to your mind, if you're doing away with all the capitalistic propaganda that's promoted to you on a daily basis, transitions are a reminder to actively live. And for me, that's what I'm doing. Part of me actively living is engaging with community, hence the creation of Black Media Nexus. So for me, I appreciate all the support that I've received from folk, whether it's text, whether it's on social media. I appreciate that. But we're gonna get right back to it, right? Because this isn't a capitalistic venture. This is love. And there's a difference, right? There's because trust me, I will take off work and I have taken off work. Like, no, 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 let's use that bereavement time. And I encourage you all to do the same. With that said, today we're diving into the latest on Israel halting humanitarian aid to Gaza. Oh, we're going to be talking 45/47's decision to cut funding for major global health programs. We're also going to be talking about the tragic Omega Psi Phi hazing death. And we'll also take a moment to honor Angie Stone's legacy in our Black Thought of the Day. So we're going to get into our first topic of the day, which is I don't even like how I titled it, Israel halting humanitarian aid to Gaza. No, Israel is continuing their genocide against the Palestinian people by way of halting humanitarian aid to Gaza. We've seen the various forms of how Israel has committed genocide against Palestinians, not only present day, but historically. We're looking now out and out murder through bombs, through shootings. We're looking at the withholding of resources, which is a strategic part of war. Even though I don't know if this is still a war at this point. And so you withhold the aid that comes in, you withhold essential supplies, food, water, medical aid. And then we look at the destruction of institutions, life-saving institutions like hospitals, schools, homes. This is all what's taking place right now in Palestine. Maybe coincidentally or not, this comes after South Africa accused Israel of genocide at the ICJ, which has raised international pressure on Israel's military operations. And so this isn't the only time, right? These aren't the only people who have been the only countries that have been putting pressure on Israel. We've seen this take place for the last 15 months now. At the United Nations, country after country after country, speaking up and saying, yo, this is a genocide. This needs to stop. But you had the United States, no matter who was in charge, two sides of the same coin. Democrats, Republicans, saying, well, no, 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 no. We're not going to necessarily call it a genocide. No, no, no. We're not going to say that. But you know what we're going to do? We going to vote against any type of measure that could potentially have our ally Israel looking at us differently, even if this means the expense of human lives. So this pressure has been put on since the 1940s, dare I say. There's also the expiration of the ceasefire deal that came into effect last month. And so now in this hostage deal between Israel and Hamas, who who is a governing body, again, language matters. Israel's no different than Hamas. Hamas is no different than Israel, right? Now, if we want to say both are terroristic organizations, hey, I'm here for it. But then we got to start throwing some other folk in there too, like the United States, like Russia. All right. Now the hostage deal was on the verge of collapsing, which is threatening the ceasefire efforts. Now Israel is insisting on military action to weaken Hamas before considering negotiations. So it's like, yeah, you know what? Yeah, we entered this agreement like a month or some change ago. We still been killing y'all. Let's be clear. You just need to go to social media, go to Twitter to see. Palestinian folk have still been being killed. Now, supposedly the U.S. is trying to play mediator as the U.S. continues to give military aid to Israel, which has consistently contradicted this idea of hey, we're peacemakers. When have you ever known the United States to be peacemakers? We just seen it over the weekend, well last week, with Zelensky in the White House, and how Vance and how 45, 47. I need a name to call Vance because I don't want to say his name. I don't want to disrespect the white shrew by calling him like assistant to the assistant regional manager. But we see what playing mediator looks like. You didn't say thank you, Zelensky. He's like, dog, what are we doing here? You didn't say thank you. Dog, thank you. No, but you still ain't say it. What are we doing here? But this is supposed to be what mediation from the United States government looks like. And this is no different than the Biden administration. It's just not outwardly as clown behavior, clown like as 45, 47 and his underling. But the mediation ain't been mediating. And so for me, when I read this story this morning, the first thing that came to mind is the first thing that came to mind when this supposed war started. With the 50,000 murders, even though some are saying it's over 100,000 of Palestinians being killed. Is this collective punishment against Palestinian civilians? Of course it is, which goes against international law. But the fact of the matter is, hey, we control all of this. In the infamous words of the black Negro scholar Beanie Siegel, you either going to get down or you going to lay down. And one of the ways, that folk like this, who may quote unquote have the upper hand, is to what? Deny aid. That's just a slow death, right? That's a slower death than shooting you, than bombing you. But then we talk about the contradictions in the U.S. peace efforts. Because we saw the United States say they're going to freeze the aid in South Africa over the land reform, where South Africa is like, listen, hey, we've 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 been a part of apartheid for a long time, which has caused land to be taken from their rightful owners and given them to South African white folk. And the United States like, whoa, 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 whoa. Whoa, relax. And we know why that is. Partially, you got Elon Musk, who's a white South African, a colonizer. But then we look on this end and say, hey, well, this is active apartheid that's taking place. Why aren't you freezing the funding? Because they're blocking humanitarian relief. Why aren't you freezing the funding? Because they're not willing to enter another ceasefire deal. Because we know why. It's bigger than Nino Brown, right? This bigger than Nino Brown. What this is an ally. If we control you, then we gonna be good. This is good for our interest in the Middle East. So you know what? We're gonna keep the young boy on the payroll. Cause God forbid, they didn't have him. What would then happen to Israel? And no, 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 I'm not saying um, at this point Israel exists. So this isn't a conversation about does it have a right to exist? It exists. And say, how can I have a stronghold in this part of the world where otherwise I will not? And so when I consider just the use of humanitarian aid as a political tool, how disgusting is that? How disgusting is using humanitarian aid as a political tool in strategic interest, as opposed to getting what people need to survive? So when we look at what Zelensky received, and yes, I'm going to be critical of that, but not for the reasons of, hey, don't help people. Part of it is, well, hey, you sending out billions there because your money is fake. Money is a fictional idea, right? That was made into something tangible. We could have easily used chapstick and said, hey, the more chapstick you have, the more power you have. But Ukraine received $17.2 billion in foreign aid. Because why? The geopolitical priorities at the time. United States wasn't effing with Russia. Now, since the administration changed, what's happening? You got boys hugging it out. 45/47. And this man Putin, like, listen, this is just, listen. No, you know what, Zelensky? We ain't rocking with you like that. More so with this idea of ego and power than anything else, right? Yet and still, we had aid flowing to Ukraine while Gaza has aid restrictions. I refuse to believe that advocates here in America and throughout the world will not continue to put pressure on these colonizing institutions, these colonizing countries, because ultimately I believe in the human spirit. I believe in our ability to to persevere. Because why? We've seen it before, right? This isn't new. This isn't new. Apartheid isn't new. We know that historically the United States has supported apartheid. It has supported South Africa. We know that the US continues to have a hand in a strong hand in why Haiti cannot fully experience self-determination. We have an understanding about how the Black Panther Party and any type of black liberation movement, because that's what this is, right? When we talk about South Africa, when we talk about Haiti, when we talk about Black Panthers and COINTELPRO, we know that the United States hates this level of resistance. It hates these types of movements. But ultimately, there's a cost. Civilians pay this cost. We're talking about closures of clinics. We're talking about wanting a country to come back groveling how they wanted Zelensky to do. And so ultimately, the hypocrisy is real. The hypocrisy is real. With that being said, we're going to transition into our next story, which again, it's about hypocrisy and 45/47 ending the funding for global health programs. So within the last 72 hours, 45/47 issued an executive order cutting U.S. funding for malaria, HIV, and other global health programs that impacts millions worldwide. Programs targeted include the PEPFAR program, which is HIV and AIDS relief, and the Global Malaria Initiative, which has literally saved millions of lives over the past 2 decades. 45/47's justification, they said, listen, no. We should be focused on domestic health issues first. Right? You hear the contradictory across administrations. We send these billions out to Israel. But no. With this, where it saves human lives, we got to cut that bread. We got to cut that money. And of course, the decision has been met with international backlash that because these are seemingly preventable deaths that's going to be taking place in Africa, in Latin America, in parts of Asia. Now, there are some who argue that this funding cut appeases conservative members in government. Why? Because they're against any type of global initiative. This is like a hallmark of white supremacy. It wants to see self do better at the expense of others. When I read the story, I immediately thought of the Tuskegee experiment, which for over 40 years, black men, many of whom with syphilis, which is cured by what? Penicillin, was used as test monkeys to see the life cycle of this treatable disease. Why? Because if we could do it on those who we don't consider human, let's give them a little credit, a little less than human, right? Ain't that what they said in the Constitution at one point? If we could test it out on these people, we can uphold this standard of whiteness and white supremacy. So for me, I consider in juxtaposed what's happening internationally that'll undoubtedly affect black and brown folk with how black and brown folk are treated here in the United States. We look at the black maternal mortality rate, and funding has been cut there. We look at the lack of funding in black mental health initiatives. That mirrors what's taking place internationally. We look at the pandemic response, which saw black and brown folk disproportionately impacted, dying. Because why? Access, limited access, experiencing higher infection rates due to these glaring systemic inequities that have not only just showed up in COVID, which have been in existence for since we got here to this settler colony. Ultimately, what it is it's use and discard, right? Use and discard. Ever since we've gotten here, the United States government's credo has been, and I might have said creed motto, I might have put them both together. Use and discard. Black bodies, brown bodies are expendable. But at what expense? At what expense? New health crisis that may emerge. All right. So if we consider PEPFAR internationally, reversing the gains that's made, hundreds of deaths, hundreds of thousands of deaths. We're looking at the collapse of infrastructures, health infrastructures. Again, look at the parallels between what's happening in Gaza and Palestine. I don't think there's a hospital that exists at this point. This is the consequences of a lack of funding. You don't need a bomb to be dropped on a hospital. You just withhold money, right? So the collapsing of these systems. And ultimately what's harmed is for those who look at the USA of being some godly space, some godly country who has an impeccable reputation. For anybody who picks up a book, you recognize that this isn't true. I know in navigating my social media, I see so many people like we must look like a fool across the world based off how 45/47's presidency has been going. Oh, you think now is the time that they're like, yeah, the United States are a bunch of fools. No, this has been the idea forever. But still, even in being a bunch of fools, some folk look at their situation, their circumstances, and say, "Hey, you know what? They some fools here too." But maybe I'll try my hand at those fools over there to improve the quality of our lives. And so I'm not sure what the partnerships might look like going forward. I could see it collapsing, but all what happens is just print more money. But what'll happen is, and what we're seeing when we look at Ukraine and Zelensky going back in Europe, like, yo, everybody, let's meet up. Let's meet up, dog. Yeah, you know what? I might not fools with you, but we don't fool with them. What's that saying? The enemy of my enemy is my friend. And then what'll happen if it is that World War III? That 45/47 was threatening Zelensky could be a possible outcome if he doesn't capitulate and say thank you. It's going to be black and brown bodies on that front line while they're in their little room eating tea and crumpets. or whatever they eat down there. It might be like Hooters wings. I never had Hooters wings, but I'm sure that's probably a 45, 47's alley. But my heart, my thoughts and prayers, and you know I hate thoughts and prayers because there's you can always do more. When I wear my Free Palestine hoodie, that's me doing a little bit more. When I come on a podcast and speak truth to power and post the clips and all of that, that's doing a little bit more. And I'm reminded of that when I go to places like the gym and Palestinian folk are like, thank you, brother. Thank you, Habibi. I had to Google what Habibi meant. You know what I mean? Beloved, my love. Thank you. It gives folk hope. And we probably should be doing more. I should be doing more for the Sudan, for Congo, for Haiti, for those places who do not get the airtime. Again, I'm not above falling victim to not knowing due to a lack of not studying. But when you know better, you're supposed to do better. And so that's the message. Know better, do better, continue to push back, continue to be a solid probationary ally, pushing back against this administration in support of Palestinians, in support of the Congolese, in support of Haitians, in support of the Sudanese, in support of our Latin American family. Because why? Humanity in our existence requires it. And with that said, we're going to keep the party going. And we're going to get into a new segment that I'm introducing, which is quick hits. And what I'll do is in quick hits is briefly touch on a news story and give my visceral reaction. And so our first story is a tragic one. It's regarding Omega Psi Phi and the hazing death of 20-year-old junior mechanical engineering student at Southern University, which is in Louisiana, Caleb Wilson, who died in an off-campus fraternity event on February 27th. My thoughts, why is this still a thing? And you may be thinking, Phil, why is what a thing? Sororities and fraternities, listen, okay, it was never my bag, but it wasn't meant for me. I considered it at one point in my academic career, but I thought against it. It's a part of the college experience for so many, especially when we look at historically what it's meant to black and brown folk. It was community and continues to be community. But for me and for the life of me, I do not understand the hazing aspect of it. Not only the psychological hazing that takes place, hey, go knock down the wall. Right, that's the cliche one that folk know. But letting somebody kick my ass so we can be brothers, so we can be sisters. What does that level of violence have to do with us being in community? Is it what? You don't want to be considered a skater? You're a skater if you don't get your ass kicked and somebody from 40 years ago did? What does that mean? If community, I'll just use the overarching term black excellence, which you know I don't really like, but I'm just going to use it to encompass the purpose of these they are institutions. These institutions are. And so ultimately, a young man lost his life because he wanted to be down with an organization that's pretty well documented that you got to go through some things to be a part of. I hope in this we recognize that you don't need to experience harm and violence to be a part of community. It's just not worth it. It's just not worth it. Rest in peace to Caleb Wilson. Our second quick hit. Trump wants English as the official language. I said his name. 45/47. Not laugh at this because it's insane, right? Signed an executive order um, declaring English as the official language of the United States, framing it as a way to uphold American values. Opponents argue that this proposal serves as a xenophobic signal, potentially marginalizing immigrants and non English speakers, and may be a strategy to galvanize nationalist sentiments amongst his political base, as if they needed more galvanizing from certain things. No, they are fully emboldened at this point. But what this does is, and I appreciate it because it goes against this idea of multiculturalism that has been pushed down the throats of Americans forever. That's not what this is. This has always been about the white male and how he views America. If it was about multiculturalism, then there will be a lot more indigenous languages existing here in the United States. But no, they were slaughtered. For what reason? This white nationalism. He's just following in the long line of race hating white supremacists. And it's straight like that. Now, our third and final quick hit is regarding the tragic death of Amiri Dior, a 23-year-old black transgender woman that occurred on February 21st in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. The incident is under investigation as a homicide. It's always important for me as a probationary ally to bring to light the systemic issues and, more importantly, the systemic violence that those who are intentionally marginalized experience in this country. Specifically, our black queer family, our black women, our black transgender folk, and all the varying identities that exist. Why? Because much like COVID, we recognize that black folk are going to suffer disproportionately. And so it's no different when it comes to black transgender women experiencing violence, fatal violence at that. In 2021, 73% of known transgender homicide victims were black trans women. I'm going to get that to you one more time. In 2021, 73% of known transgender homicide victims were black trans women, which means that out of 10 transgender folk who were killed, 7 of them were black. Rest in peace, Remy Fells. This underscores the systemic issues that contribute to the heightened vulnerability of black transgender women. We're talking transphobia, racism, socioeconomic disparities. This is a crisis, and it's a little known, talked about crisis. Why? Because look at all the intersecting identities that I just discussed. You add in this current administration, the emboldening of a base. And it's not just the emboldening of a base to be anti-LGBTQ plus IA. Black men are more than likely to be the perpetrators of this fatal violence. And so it's important for this issue. It's important for our humanity to include Amiri Dior and the countless black trans women, black trans folk, black queer folk who will experience fatal violence. Because there's no way for me to be free if the black person next to me, no matter their identity, ain't free as well. And now it's time for Dr. Phil's Black Thought of the Day. Today, we remember the legacy And now it's time for Dr. Phil's Black Thought of the Day. Today, we remember the life and legacy of Angie Stone, a woman whose voice, talent, and resilience left an undeniable mark on R&B and soul music. She passed away at 63 years old in a tragic car accident, but her impact, that lives on forever. For me, I can't think of many songs that revere and speak life into black men quite like Angie Stone's brother. That song, it's been black men's anthem for 25 years. A love letter to us, reminding us of our strength, our value, and our resilience, even when the world tries to tell us otherwise. Beyond the music, Angie defied the odds. She was fat. She was black. She was a woman, a combination that society never appreciates. And yet, she built a long, successful career in an industry that constantly tries to erase or undervalue women like her. She persevered. She overcame diabetes, colorism, the barriers that come with just existing in this world as a dark-skinned black woman. But she made it. She became a mainstay in black music, and she never stopped giving us timeless, soulful records. Because of her, I will forever remember that I am a strong brother, and there's no one above me. Rest in power, Queen Angie Stone. Listen, I appreciate you all for tuning in. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow us at Black Media Nexus on YouTube, Twitch, and Patreon, and wherever you're audio streaming this episode. Appreciate you. Peace.